All right, I'm going to review Andor. This is a request from Zega. If you want to become a member, the link's in the description. I review one thing a month upon request from members. I try to limit it to a short season of TV or a movie. But let's get into it. Andor was a really weird one for me because it was a really well-written story. They did some cool world-building things. And the actors that play all the characters are very charismatic. But I didn't really find myself getting attached to the characters themselves. Like, you understand why the characters do what they do, but there's never really a point for me where I'm like, I care about this person or that person. The closest two I would say are probably Luthen and Mon Mothma. I thought both their characters were really interesting and they kind of had the most going on. Obviously, Andy Serkis plays Kino, and Andy Serkis is always awesome. But the character of Kino, we really didn't get much about beyond him being a prisoner. So I didn't really get emotionally attached to him or anything, even though his character made sense for what it was. And I think this is why Andor has kind of gone under the radar relative to other Star Wars things, because it's objectively just a well-written story, but it's almost kind of detached and cold character-wise. And more broadly speaking, the reason that a lot of people didn't really get into it is because the main character is kind of the least interesting. Like, he has a very close relationship with Bix and his mom. And then beyond that, he's just kind of trying to survive. When it starts off, he's looking for his sister, and you're like, oh, maybe the Empire had something to do with his sister becoming a prostitute. He's going to be going on kind of a quest to find her and get pulled into the rebellion along the way. But it kind of gets brought up and then just vanishes. So then we end up in a situation where he's just kind of going from one thing to the next, being dragged along. And then the more interesting characters are Luthen and Mon Mothma. And then even the time that we get with other characters like Bix, like Marva, we see a little bit of Saul Guerrera. We spend a lot of time with Cyril. I just feel like they don't really do much to get you invested in them, even though you understand why they're doing what they're doing. And I thought they did some pretty cool things with the world building, but there was also a couple of things I thought were kind of wonky. So let's just get into it. So Cassian Andor's journey, it was really weird to me how they went about it, because it starts off and he's getting blackmailed by these corporate cops on behalf of the Empire. And then it escalates. He accidentally kills him and he's on the run. Perfectly fine motivation. You totally get it. They attack his little hometown and he's kind of like, screw the Empire. Again, you get it. From there, he goes and finds out about this little group of rebels. And the rebels all have their own grudges against the Empire. They each have their own motivation. It's all fine. But he keeps himself pretty distant and they pull off a big heist. The heist itself was pretty cool. I like the execution. I like the idea of this space storm crystal thing that looks really neat. The way it's done was all really interesting. But then as soon as that ends, he kind of goes back to being like, okay, I don't really care about the Empire, so I'm going to live my life again. And he says outright he's just there for money. It's not like some big twist or reveal or anything like that. Then he just like randomly gets picked up and thrown into prison. And the rest of the show is essentially him in prison and their escape. I thought it was super weird that once he escapes, they do this whole big setup where he's going to go back to his mom's funeral because she's dead now. And then he pretty much sits out the entire finale, which is a really strange choice when you consider the show is called Andor. Like, I know you don't want him just dominating and taking over the whole rebellion and all that, because you want to be consistent with the story and he's just a regular guy and whatever. But I thought it was a really weird choice to have him just kind of watch the finale with us while his little city is rebelling against the Empire. I don't really have an opinion on Diego Luna as an actor, but he's just kind of there and drifting along. It makes him sort of forgettable in his own show, but you spend the most time with him. So I think that's part of why many people probably didn't latch on to the show, is because he's just kind of getting dragged along for the ride. I don't think he's a super interesting character. And then he's surrounded by more interesting people who, at least in this show, are being more well acted. So the next character I want to talk about is Mon Mothma, because Mon Mothma has a lot going on and she's really struggling with kind of her public face of the Senate and then her own private life. Her daughter and husband give her a hard time. And then she's also got the rebellion side of her where she is investing in this revolution. She's got like a lot of spinning plates. And then there's a really big thing between her and Luthen where she's wanting to do things kind of the right way and through the government, through the bureaucracy. She doesn't want to just sacrifice people or lose them unnecessarily. She wants the politics to work. But as the show goes on, you can see that they're just kind of not. And I know the show's getting another season. Maybe some of these things in the finale will get addressed next season. But having Andor just kind of disappear and the season end with Mon Mothma kind of doing an arranged marriage deal to pay off a debt with her daughter. Really weird choice for one of your protagonists. Hopefully that gets worked out next season. But I thought she was really interesting because she had so much going on the entire time and this constant bickering with Luthen about the right way to get things done. And Luthen is much more the ends justify the means for the greater good type character. So Luthen, played by Stellan Skarsgård, who's always awesome, is kind of this antique salesman up front, but then behind the scenes, he's Axis, and he's leading rebel activity all over the galaxy. It's seemingly random, so the Empire is kind of ignoring it, or at least trying to downplay it. I really like him because he's the guy who's making the tough decisions. He's the one who's doing what's best. He understands that there's no way that they can rise up against the Empire without people dying. And I don't know if I would say that he's always right, but I like that he just makes those decisions and accepts the fact that he's going to not be able to sleep at night and that he's kind of a shitty person and that he's hoping that he'll leave something behind for the next group to rise up. But he's definitely the best character in the show. I like the arguments between him and Saul Guerrera, between him and Mon Mothma, where he's like, look, we have to sacrifice this amount of people for these results long term. And that's just how it is. Like pretty much it's war. Cyril is a character I was pretty disappointed with because I really liked him the first 3 episodes where he's like, look, this is our job. We need to do it. And his boss is like, no, we don't want to cause a ruckus. Just file the paperwork. Let it be done. We don't need to bother the Empire. He goes against it and it completely screws him over to where he loses his job. He's living at home and kind of gets stuck in a cubicle. And I liked all that for like 1 or 2 episodes, but then it doesn't really end until the finale. Like the whole season goes on and it's just him getting bitched at by his mom and working in his cubicle. And then also kind of stalking the ISB agent, Daedra. So I don't know. I thought the idea for him was really cool, but then he ends up just kind of being, I would say, almost one-dimensional and sort of irrelevant for most of the story. Like he has a big part in the first couple episodes and then a big part at the end. And the whole middle for him was kind of lackluster for me because it sort of felt like he was just stuck in the same place the whole time. I know he has a couple scenes here and there, but I just didn't really feel like they did much with him. And I would have liked to see a little bit more, or at least him have a kind of redemption arc a little bit quicker. You could get more of him after the fact. I want to mention Vel. She's the leader of their little group that does the heist halfway through the season at the Empire base. And she's interesting because she's Mon Mothma's cousin and she's all in on the rebellion. But she's like kind of a shitty leader. Like people question her a lot and backtalk her a lot. And she's really indecisive. And then she's always kind of bickering with her girlfriend or wife, Cinta, because Cinta's prioritizing the rebellion over their relationship. And then at the end, she's kind of struggling with the fact that they want to kill Andor to silence him. But I don't know what it is. I just didn't really get very invested in her. Like she's fine. And I get why she's doing everything that she's doing. I just kind of didn't care that much. And that's sort of the problem that I had with the whole show. And that could just be me. I don't know if for whatever reason I just didn't get attached to the characters, but other people did. Because they're all well executed and well written. I just wasn't emotionally invested. It kind of all felt very procedural, almost like Dune. One of the last big characters to talk about is Daedra Miro, who's an ISB agent. I like her that she's kind of like a mad dog looking for data and just really pursuing any evidence she can to support her theory that the rebellion is becoming more organized and that she really is going after it and kind of staying up all night and like living for her job. And she's obviously smart. She makes a lot of good decisions. She's pretty ruthless. They do some brutal torture of Bix in the show. But she's another one that I get why she's doing what she's doing, but there's never really a scene that makes me think like I give a shit about this person. And also they did something in the finale and I can't tell if next season is going to lead to her and Cyril having a relationship. And if they do, Star Wars just needs to give up on having couples. Because Cyril pretty much stalks her this season and she says as much and that she could have him arrested. And even at the end, he saves her because he was stalking. And they're like really close and she's out of breath. And I can't tell if it's supposed to be like a little bit of a moment there. But yeah, I mean, she's just a solid character. Another one that you get all the decisions that she makes, but I don't know how attached you get to her. And you don't even get attached in a way that you're like, I fucking hate her either. She's just kind of this representation of the Empire enforcing their will and doing her job. And Kino is the last one that I want to talk about. He's the leader of the cell block in Andor's prison group for the day shift, 5-2D. And obviously Andy Serkis always kills the roles that he's in. Again, you get why he's doing what he's doing. He just wants to get out. He has 270 days left or whatever, which is like 7 to 8 months. After the time skip and some stuff happens, he's got like 6 months. And he does have a very good scene, but it just rang a little bit hollow for me because I didn't really get attached to him. So his whole arc is he just wants to get through the next few months and get out. They find out partway through that people that are getting out actually just get transferred. And then when he realizes that, he helps Andor lead an escape. So then Andor's group busts out. They break open the whole prison. and everyone goes and jumps outside in the water to swim for shore. I think it's kind of a stretch that any of them could have lived because of how far it is, but whatever. Or that at a minimum, they wouldn't have gotten caught. Either way, after he leads the breakout, he gives a really good speech. And then when they get to the exit, he says, I can't swim. So he knew that he was never going to make it out, but he led the breakout anyway, which is a really good arc. But the problem is we don't really know anything about him other than he runs the cell block and that he wants to get out. Like, it would have been nice if they had used some of the time to have that scene where you're like, oh, he's a political prisoner also. Because for all we know, he's a fucking murderer or a rapist. They don't say. Or if they had taken the time to have him do the thing where he's like, I can't wait to get out and taste green milk again on planet buttfuck or whatever. Just something. But you just never have that moment with him. I think that's what I'm trying to get at with all the characters, is they don't have that moment where you're like, oh, I care about this, except for maybe Luthen and Mon Mothma. The rest of them function at their part in the plot. But for me, I didn't have that emotional investment. I want to talk about the world building a little bit also. One of the things I thought was a little bit wonky with it is Andor's backstory. So his backstory is that he comes from like this tribe that seems to be almost like one of those Amazonian tribes who've never run into civilization. And they use like blow dart guns, but they have regular clothes. And there used to be a mining facility there, but it blew up or something and it got abandoned. I don't know. For me, this is just a bit weird, and I'm not sure if I buy it. They actually mentioned something being 14,000 years old in the show. I think it's safe to assume that their galactic civilization is even older than that. I guess I just don't know if I could buy that you'd have these untouched areas in the mid-rim in particular after tens of thousands of years. Because we have areas that are untouched on Earth, right? With one planet. But we also don't have the capability to just scan entire planet. There's no reason that the government or scientists or whoever wouldn't have ships going to every single planet and scanning for civilizations, scanning for resources. And then there's also the question of how do they never develop past blow dart guns, especially if there used to be Republic resources there? Like, is there nothing left behind that they could use and kind of reverse engineer and develop, or at least take the idea and develop their own stuff? So that was a bit weird to me. Something else that was a bit frustrating to me is because every planet, you can tell they want to be super diverse and mixed and whatever. I think that makes sense on like Coruscant. But for example, when they're doing the heist, you see that all the people that are from there, I think they're called the Donnie, are kind of like Scottish looking or Irish looking or whatever. And I think that gives it a much more distinct feel as its own place. And that was part of kind of what bothered me too with Andor being found so quickly, as that they're like, oh, he's from this one planet where like one person ever is from because we killed all the villagers. But he doesn't look very distinct among those people because the group of people they have there is so diverse. He just looks like another guy. And I guess you could say maybe that's why he picked it, but it's also like, why is this seemingly backwater sort of primitive area based on their traditions and communicating with hitting metal things and all that? Why is it some kind of hub for the galaxy to draw in all kinds of people? Maybe that's uncharitable, but I thought to myself when I was watching it, this would be a lot easier for him to stand out if they were all white or Asian or whatever, and he looked a little bit different, so you could tell like his features were unique on that planet, or at least he was in a very small minority. It doesn't have to be some kind of ethno state. Overall, though, I thought the world building was neat. I thought it was cool seeing that the Empire hired out these contractors to enforce the law. I thought this eye thing was really cool. I thought the idea of the Empire using prison labor to build Death Star parts was very realistic. I thought it was smart to have these sort of remote posts that the Empire soldiers hate being at, and they're kind of screwing around, and that's why they got exploited. It was a very good idea. I mean, they even managed to put gay chicks in it and make them not lame. Probably the best thing they did, though, world building wise, was make the Empire functional. Like, you can see that the Empire is competent, they're a threat, stormtroopers are killing people amazingly. Like, by making the Empire not completely fucking retarded, it does make them a lot more intimidating and a lot more of an authority, and you understand why they're a threat, as opposed to the other Disney shit we've seen where stormtroopers are just falling off speeders and not hitting shit and letting them get karate chopped and whatever else. So that was really nice to see. Overall, it's a good show. It's just one that I was never really emotionally invested in at any point, which is a very strange thing to happen for a show where it just does everything right, but you kind of don't care. But that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'll probably watch season 2 and talk about it at least. I mean, this is the best that Disney Star Wars has had to offer. I feel pretty comfortable saying. A lot of people like Rogue One the best. I think Rogue One is just riding on people remembering the Darth Vader scene and forgetting the first hour and a half of that movie, honestly. But yeah, I think this was overall a good recommendation, a pretty good show. It was nice to see something competent in Star Wars. I'm sure I left a ton of stuff out, but I'm trying to keep the video length reasonable, and I feel like I hit all the big stuff. So maybe season 2 will expand a little bit more, and maybe by then I'll buy it emotionally as well. So another good recommendation. If you're still here, let me know what you think of the show. I try to respond to all the comments that are insults. I'd wager there'd be a lot less insults than on my Deadpool review. But like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.